Your business is struggling right now, money's tight, you're lying awake at night thinking, how on earth am I going to survive? I want you to know one thing before we start this video. A struggling business is not always a failing business. The gap between those two things is generally bigger than most people think. And which side you end up on usually comes down to what you do over the next few months. Now, genuinely, I have spent years helping directors and I've worked with thousands. And the businesses, when they come to me, are always in trouble. Some of them, I helped turn it around. Some of them came to me too late, and the difference between those two outcomes is rarely about how talented the director is, or even how good the business was, or even the effort they put in. It's almost a handful of decisions. And if you make these decisions early enough, there's a good chance that they can matter in the long run. Now, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to actually fix a struggling business. It's not going to be any vague motivational bollocks. There's loads of those videos on YouTube. I'm going to give you real practical steps that I take directors through. But I'm going to warn you, some of what I'm going to tell you is the opposite of what your gut is screaming at you to do. Now, the instinct feels like the obvious fix, the one nearly every struggling director reaches for first. And guess what? It's very often the exact thing that finishes the business off. And I'm going to show you why. And there's one question that I want you to be able to answer honestly by the time we're done. And it's a question I couldn't answer about my own business until it was too late. And it is the single most important thing you can know about yours. So let's start the video. Let's get straight into it. Here's where almost every struggling director goes wrong before they've even started. They try and fix a business while flying blind. They know something's off because the bank balance is tighter than it used to be. There's a knot in the stomach every time a bill comes. You start ducking HMRC. But if you ask them properly, what's the problem? Where's the money going? Which parts of your business are profitable? Which ones are losing money? They can't tell you. They're literally running on anxiety, fear, adrenaline, and guilt sometimes. And you cannot fix a problem that you can't see. So I had a director come to me very recently, convinced, like most people are, they've got a sales problem. He would have bet his life on it. And he'd spent the best part of a year throwing everything at winning more work. So spending more on marketing, getting more quotes out there, working longer hours, employing more salespeople to chase down every lead. I mean, this guy was absolutely exhausted. Nothing had gotten better. In fact, it had gotten worse. So we did the one thing that he hadn't done. We actually sat him down. We got a finance team in. And we looked at the numbers properly, like job by job. And the truth was, listen, this guy did not have a sales problem at all. His marketing was great. His referral network was great. He had plenty of leads, plenty of sales. But what he had was a lot of customers he was losing money on every single month. And he'd never seen it. He'd never looked at the business in that much detail to spot it. And I can identify with that. Listen, revenues are about here, costs are about here, we're gravy, yeah? That is how I used to look at business. This guy basically spent a year sprinting in the wrong direction. He was trying to solve a problem that he didn't have. Now, the lesson for anyone is this. The first step in fixing a struggling business is not action. It's not running at something. It's getting clarity. You need to understand the current picture of what's going on, what's coming in on the business, what's going out, who do you owe, when do you owe it, what parts of the business are actually making you money. And the easiest way to do that is have a finance function. And that doesn't mean spending 150 grand a year on a finance director. It might be the basics of having a bookkeeper for a few £100 every month, giving you a monthly profit and loss and a balance sheet. And if you have multiple jobs on the go, doing a profit and loss for each of those jobs. Now, if you get that picture first, you can see what's going on. If you're running your business without a basic profit and loss every month, you are relying on, say, your accounts that were done bloody 12 months ago, you have no visibility on your business. It's like trying to drive your way out of fog with your eyes shut. Now, once your eyes are open, the very next thing you have to work out is what kind of trouble are you actually in? Because, listen, after years of doing this, there are two completely different problems that feel exactly the same from the inside. And if you get them mixed up, the fix that you reach for can actually make things worse. When a business is struggling, it almost always shows up as the same symptom. There's not enough money. Your bank account's tight, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And because the symptom looks the same, a director will assume the problem's the same, and it isn't. Again, there are two very different types of problem behind that symptom, and they need opposite cures. The first is a cash flow problem, and that's when the business is actually profitable. It makes money on what it does on paper, but the timings are all wrong. Customers pay too slowly, you pay suppliers too fast, you've got money tied up in work that you've done but you've not been paid for yet. And the business is sound, but the cash is stuck in the wrong places at the wrong times. The second problem is completely different. It's a profitability problem. And that's when the business simply, it's not making enough money on what it does. Either your prices are too low, your costs are too high, and even when everyone pays on time, there's still not enough left over. Now, this is why this matters so much. The fixes to those two problems are almost opposite. If you've got a cash flow problem in a profitable business, the answer might just be tightening up how you invoice, getting customers to pay you faster, negotiating better terms with suppliers, or in some cases, bringing in some short-term funding that bridges that gap. You're fixing the plumbing, not the engine. But if you've got a profitability problem, funding it's literally the worst thing you can do. Borrowing money to prop up a business that loses money on what it does just means now you lose money and you owe money, and that money's going to land on you personally. You've made it worse. A profitability problem needs you to change the actual business, the pricing, the costs, the structure. And the lesson's this: before you change a single thing, diagnose which problem you've actually got. Are you profitable or just cash starved? Or are you genuinely losing money on what you do? Because the cure for one is the poison for the other. And if you get this wrong, and I see this all the time, you can spend money and energy making the situation considerably worse. I lose track of how many directors have got a profitability problem and they take on personally guaranteed debt. Like they borrow their way, they're trying to borrow their way out of a business that isn't making money. And all that they end up with at the end of it is not only have they got a load of business debt, they've now got a load of personal debt. And you can, like I see directors lose their homes over this. And this sort of brings me to the point that I warned you about at the start, that there is an instinct that feels like the obvious answer when things are tight. Nearly every director will reach for this. And if they do, it can quietly finish them off. And I want to show you now exactly how it happens. So when a business is struggling, what is the one thought that lights up in your head? I need more sales. And it feels logical. Not enough money coming in, sound. Let's bring more money in. Let's sell more. Let's win more work. Let's grow our way out of this problem. And if you've got a profitability problem, if their margins are broken, growing your way out of it is one of the most dangerous things you can possibly do. Because if you're losing money on every job, then every extra job you win loses you more money. The more you sell, the faster you bleed. You're not climbing out of a hole, you're digging it quicker. And I have watched this destroy countless directors. I had a guy a couple of months ago, he rang me. Business was struggling and he landed what he thought was like the contract that was going to save him. You know, one of those massive jobs, a big one, biggest he'd ever won. And he were over the moon. He thought he cracked it. But he priced it wrong. You know yourself, those big jobs, you've got to be a little bit more competitive on price. The margins on this one were wafer thin. And once you accounted for absolutely everything it cost to deliver and running the business and some delays, you were breaking even at best. And on some of the work, when we looked at it, you were losing money outright. But because the contract was so big, it swallowed his whole business. All his time, all his cash, all his people poured into a contract that wasn't really making him anything. And the bigger that contract got, the closer he came to going under. And the thing that he thought was actually going to rescue him was the thing that actually put him in the ground. And listen, the lesson's simple. When you're struggling, I need more sales feels like an obvious fix. But you might not have a sales problem. You might have a pricing problem or a margin problem. And if you do, more sales is just going to mean more losses. And sometimes the real fix is actually the opposite of what your gut says. Fewer jobs at better prices with proper margins will save a business more than cheap work that could have killed it. You've got to fix what each sale is worth before you go chasing more of them. Now, the other instincts directors reach for the moment things get tight is to start cutting costs. And don't get me wrong, cutting costs is exactly the right thing to do. But there's a way to do it that helps, and there's a way to do it that quietly accelerates the whole decline. Most directors do the second one. Now, when money's tight, the instinct is to cut costs. That is a good instinct. Money going out the door that doesn't need to be going out the door is money you can't afford to lose. The problem is how directors do it. In a panic, they just slash everything across the board. To take a red pen, every line in the P&L, right, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut this. And doing that, they're often cutting the very things that actually bring money in at the start, because not all costs are equal. I mean, okay, there are costs that cost you money, as daft as that sounds, like subscriptions you don't use, that second premises you don't really need, the stuff that's quietly draining you, okay? You cut them hard with no sentiment, get rid of them. But then there are costs that actually make you money. That salesperson who brings the work in, marketing generates leads. I mean, if you are struggling, cutting your marketing spend is going to kill you, okay? You might have good people who are the reason customers stay. Listen, marketing, salespeople, good staff, they aren't costs. They're investments in your business. But if you panic and you cut those costs to save a few quid, your revenue will fall faster than the cost you've saved. And the business just goes downhill quicker. And I've seen this all the time over the years. I saw a director do this a few months ago. Got tight. First thing he cut was his marketing spend because he thought it was a luxury. Within a couple of months, he had no leads. No leads, no pipeline, no business. His revenue dropped off a cliff. And he'd saved himself a few £1,000s with his marketing spend, but he'd lost tens of thousands in work. He cut the thing that were feeding his business. Now the lesson's this: when you cut costs, don't just slash everything. Separate the costs that cost you money from the costs that actually make you money. By all means, go in, renegotiate with suppliers, energy bills, merchant terminals, consultants that you bring in, but be really careful with the things that make you money. Be absolutely ruthless with the things that don't, but protect the second ones with your life. If you cut well, that can help. Cutting blindly can finish you off. Now, there's one group of people who can either be your biggest threat in turning your business round or your biggest ally. And most people treat them as the enemy. They hide from them right up until it's too late. And I'm going to show you how, going through a real story, how you can get creditors firmly on your side instead. Now, the director, let's call him John. He ran a small manufacturing business, good products, hit a serious rough patch. A couple of big customers had paid him very, very late, and it had knocked a massive hole in his cash flow. He couldn't climb out of it. he was falling behind with HMRC. He had 2 key suppliers. He was behind with rent. And here's what made the difference. John did what most directors can't bring themselves to do. And instead of hiding from people he owed, came to us early, said, Chris, I've got this problem. We looked at him, we helped him go through everything. And he openly started to speak to creditors before they started to chase him. And what we did, sat him down, we built a proper picture of what was going on. Back to step 1, real numbers. And then we helped him approach each creditor with a plan. With HMRC, we helped him negotiate a time to pay arrangement over 4 years, built around what the business could afford. Now, HMRC wanted it quicker in 4 years, but we put together a proposal that even in a bad month, he'd be able to pay. And we did the same with his 2 main suppliers. They wanted it within 90 days. We managed to stretch it over 12 months. He was honest. He told them what was going on. It was a tough stretch. And guess what? Those suppliers had other customers that were going through the same tough stretch. He asked for them extended terms and they got accepted. And that surprises people. Creditors will say yes to you more often than not. Because if you go to them early enough, honestly, with a plan, before they're forced to chase you, it sets you apart from everyone else. Because most people go into ostrich mode and bury their head in the sand. If you ignore a creditor, if they're having to send letters to you, if they're having to chase you, if they're wondering they're ever going to see that money again, they will get hostile and they will start enforcement action. But if you approach them openly, with a plan, a decent proposal, trying to do the right thing, most of them will work with you, okay? And John did. His suppliers kept supplying him. HMRC gave him the time. And the breathing room was exactly what he needed to fix the underlying business. And he's still trading today. And he's trading well. Now the lesson's this: the people you owe money to are not your enemies. They become your enemies when you go silent and you force them to chase you. But approach them early. Give them a realistic plan. And most of them will be your partners in turning the business around, especially if you've got long-standing business relationships with, you've been going for years and years, you've given loads of money for years and years. If your business is struggling, communication is leverage. Use it before you're forced to. Now, listen, we come to the last step, and it is the hardest one. And if you're still watching me here, it's a question I want you to seriously consider. Because it's the one that asks something of you personally. And it's a question I told you about at the start. The one I couldn't answer about my own business until it was too late. And it is the hardest question. Everything I've shown you so far assumes one thing. The business you've got can be fixed in its current shape. And most of the time, that's true. Listen, we get about 500 inquiries a month there. We don't do 500 insolvencies. We probably get about 50 insolvencies out of those 500. Most businesses can be turned around with clarity and some good guidance, but not all of them. And the most hardest, valuable thing you can do today is be honest with yourself about which one that you've got. Now, I'll tell you about my own experience, because listen, I've lived this one. When my business was going under, I did not want to admit failure. I worked longer hours. I threw money at it that I shouldn't done. And the whole time there was a question I couldn't bring myself to ask. And it's, is this business going to fail? All my competition shut down the minute there was a change in government legislation. And I'd read that many inspirational, motivational books. I was dangerous. And I kept on ploughing through. It's because I couldn't be honest with myself. Because asking that question, is this business viable, felt like admitting failure, felt like giving up. So I kept my head down and I kept pushing, and I left it far too late. And here's what I understand now that I wish I'd have understood then. There is a difference between a business that needs fixing and a business that needs closing or restructuring. Because a business that needs fixing can be turned around with the steps I've walked you through today. But a business that either needs closing or restructuring needs something more. And sometimes it's a formal insolvency process. And that can close the company down and wind it down in an orderly fashion. And sometimes it lets the genuinely good parts of a business survive while dealing with the parts that can't carry on. And asking that question yourself early enough doesn't close doors, it actually opens them. Because if you ask it early, while there's still time, you have loads of options on the table. And you might find a way to save the viable heart of the business and come through it in a far stronger position. But if you ask it too late like I did, one by one of those options disappear. And the lesson's this: the single most important thing you can know about your struggling business is the honest answer to one question. Can it be fixed as it is, or does it need restructuring? And asking it is not admitting defeat. It is the bravest and most useful thing a struggling director can do. And the earlier you ask it, the more power you have over the answer. So I hope you found the video useful. Chris Worden, Director First. There's been no call to action on this one. But guess what? If you're still with me now, there's a chance you've got a big problem that you need some help with. We offer free and independent advice. Go to the description. Top link, book a call with my team. We'll call you today. We've got over 755-star reviews on Trustpilot. If you don't want to speak to us, I get it, but you might want the guide to insolvency, and that's on the link below it. All I want is your email address. Now, if you want to know more about how you can use a pre-pack to save the valuable parts of your business, I want you to go over there and watch that video on pre-packs. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Thank you.